Good evening, everybody. This is another edition of Muni Poly Matters podcast. I'm very pleased to be sitting down with another candidate running in the municipal election this October 24th. I'm going all the way out to Windsor now, and sitting down with a young lady. Sorry, I understand because you don't identify in the standard genders. We'll get into that later. I'm pleased to introduce Sydney Brouillard-Coyle. I'm sorry, I should ask how to pronounce your name first, but
So it's a Brouillard-Coyle.
Brouillard-Coyle. Okay, maybe I'll just call you Sydney. It's easier. So Sydney is running in Ward 7 for city councillor. So I guess I'll just get right into it because you are probably like I'm getting a little bit personal background here. You're probably the first I guess non-binary person that I've had an in-depth conversation with. So I hope you can forgive me if I may sound a bit undereducated about people of the transgender community or the non-binary community. I noticed that you are 22 years old, so that's incredible, and you're running for city councillor. I also noticed that when you submitted your registration, you put in your pronouns as it's not the standard he, him, she, her pronouns, and it's not something I totally quite understand. And I guess it's really a core part of your identity. So maybe I guess we'll just start off like, who is Sydney, and like, maybe just a little bit about yourself, and if you could explain to me, because someone who's not really well versed in what it is, like, why did you choose the pronouns that you use to identify yourself?
So yeah, I'm Sydney Brouillard-Coyle, and I use the pronouns they, them, near. So that's classified as a neo pronoun. So of course we have the most common pronouns of she, her, and he, him, and they, them is a pretty standard singular gender neutral pronoun. But there's also lots of pronouns beyond that. There's people who may use mixed pronouns. So that's when they have a couple of different pronouns. We look at Elliot Page, who's an actor, for example, and uses he and they pronouns. And then we have neo pronouns, which are another gender neutral pronoun that are less common, but are still just as valid as any other type of pronoun. And the examples of that, are my own pronouns, they, them, a, air, fay, fair, am, z, zir. So lots of different neo pronouns that again are less common, but it's still important that we use that person's pronoun because it's a way of honoring and respecting that person in their fullness. And for me, I particularly use these pronouns because the N stands for neutral, which really resonates with my experience as a non-binary person. And those pronouns just feel right for me. And the reason that I chose to include my pronouns on my campaign literature, on the City of Windsor website, is because it's basically the same as my name. It's how you refer to me. So if my name is going to be listed, then my pronouns should be listed as well. And whenever I'm, educating other folks on allyship, I say, including your pronouns on things like your email signature, your social media, because this is how we refer to people. We use people's names and we use pronouns. So it's just natural to include my pronouns as part of that, to open up further conversation as well about the importance of using pronouns, the importance of representation within the political atmosphere. In particular, Windsor's never actually had an openly LGBTQ city councillor. So if I'm elected, not only would I be the youngest city councillor elected, but I'd also be the first openly LGBTQ. And I'm very proud about the different aspects that make up who I am, my pronouns, the fact that I'm queer and asexual and trans and non-binary, and the fact that I'm 22, because I believe my lived experience is huge in informing who I am and the type of city councilor that I would be.
Oh, that's very interesting. So does the city of Windsor, is it like official policy that they allow you to identify with which pronouns, or was it something you had to request? Because I would imagine they very rarely not had this kind of like situation before, so was it like something that they introduced just for the first time this election cycle, that if you wanted to identify by your pronouns that you had these options or something like that? Okay.
Yeah, it's not standard practice. We don't see that in municipal or provincial or federal elections. In fact, I haven't seen many other candidates do that either locally or again, provincially or federally. But I hope that again, this will open up conversations and encourage that to become more of a standard, to leave space for candidates to specify what pronouns they use. Because again, it's about how we honor and respect the fullness of that person. And I know that that's one of the changes I'm going to be pushing for if I'm elected.
Okay, so maybe we'll just go into a little bit about yourself. You are obviously relatively young, but like, did you grow up in Windsor? Were you born? Did you grow up born in Windsor? What was it like growing up in Windsor? I know, just maybe a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was actually born in St. Catharines and lived there for the first couple of years of my life. But my mom was raised in Windsor. So we ended up moving back here when I was about 1.5. And I've lived here ever since. We did move out to the county to Essex for a couple of years and then came back to Windsor to Ward 7, which is where I've been residing for about 8 years now, living in this area, East Riverside and Forest Glade. And I had a lot of experience, throughout the city in terms of the places that I've lived, the places that I've worked and volunteered at, and gone to school. I've been to a few different schools throughout my life, so it's given me a strong understanding of the entire city. A lot of times people are kind of limited to their own area and what they're familiar with, whereas because I've had experiences in the entire city, I can better understand some of the challenges across the city. Because yes, if I'm elected, my primary focus will be Ward 7, but I also want to make life better across the city, because the reality is our lives in Ward 7 are impacted by what happens in Ward 4 and 3 and Ward 1 and across the city, things like transit access. So it's important for me to have that background of working and living in all of these different areas, and that stronger sense and stronger connection to the city as a whole, and the desire to make things better.
Okay, yes. So yes, thank you for identifying the areas in your ward, because usually I include a map showing people where exactly you're running in. So yes, Ward 7 is, I believe, on the sort of like eastern part of Windsor, a little more closer to the town of Tecumseh, I would say, than say downtown Windsor, for example, and includes the communities of Riverside and Forest Glade, as you mentioned. So I see from your website that Sydney BC-ward7.com that you included some information about your background, and it's a very extensive, interesting, I guess, array of work experiences, volunteering experiences. And I guess, see here that you went to the University of Windsor. You have a Bachelor of Music, graduated just I guess just June, and then and you've also had a number of involvement with other sort of activities as well, with about the Anglican Church, as well as with the university, and you led a number of I guess protests, like a Fun with Flags coordinator, pride walks. Oh, I thought this was interesting. Leading the protest against the opening of a Chick-fil-A in Windsor, I guess. So, yeah, why don't you just dive into a bit of some of these experiences, and then, because I want to try to like get a sense of how doing all of that led you to decide what you thought running for city councilor was the next step in, I guess, that level of activism.
Absolutely. So I guess we'll start with my education background. So as you mentioned, I just graduated with a Bachelor of Music from the University of Windsor and a minor in Women and Gender Studies. And I'm actually in the process of completing my second degree, which is in Women and Gender Studies, with a minor in Political Science. And I graduated from Walkerville Collegiate Institute, was my high school, with a specialist high skills major in arts and culture. And all of those experiences, the courses that I took, the interactions with my fellow students, with faculty and everything, have taught me a lot. Like obviously the minor in political science, politics has always been an interest for me, so that's been nice to expand that at the university level. Women in gender studies is really about that opportunity to critically think, to examine issues from so many different lenses and so many different areas. And then the music background for me has taught me about how important it is to invest in our local musicians, our artists, our photographers, our business people, people who own businesses, because this is our community. It's about building that culture that's focused on community, like by community. And I know so many of my friends who operate in kind of the gig scene, who just rely on, gigs for weddings and so on and so forth, teaching music and such. And it's important that we're giving them the support that they need and deserve. And again, investing in the community. In terms of volunteer experience, lots of different social justice kind of focuses throughout the years. Of course, I was involved in many different clubs at my high school. I was the president of our Earth team, our eco team. I was also on student council. I created the Social Justice Club, which later became Rotary Interact. So we partnered with the local Rotary organization and became actually designated as a Rotary Peace School. And I was involved with the Mental Health Club as well as the Gender and Sexuality Alliance. So lots of work throughout the high school, and then that continued through university. I was on the Creative Arts Student Society, and then mostly initiatives that were kind of outside of school. So I was part of the Windsor Essex Regional Youth Council. I was one of the founding members and a youth leader from its beginning right up to our final event, which was actually a youth gathering in regards to the 2019 federal election. And I was a big supporter in helping to plan that and engage with youth voices throughout that election. And I've also served on the Windsor Tecumseh Youth Council, which is run by Iraq, who is our member of parliament federally from the Liberal Party. And I volunteered for the Ontario NDP in the most recent provincial election for Gemma Gray Hall's campaign. So lots of involvement in a variety of different social justice issues as well as politics throughout the years. Very focused on my passions of, again, making the world a better place. And that's also translated into my work experience. So currently I'm the education lead at Trans Wellness Ontario. So I conduct outreach to encourage folks to engage in education about the trans and queer community, about how to build safer spaces. I've helped out with things like our social media and website. And I also used to be the peer mentor there as well. I resigned to be able to focus more time on my campaign and devote the time and energy that it deserves. But as a peer mentor, I worked one-on-one with clients, supporting them through their transition journey, whatever that looks like. And then a few other roles, working for the University of Windsor as a teaching assistant, through their kind of student jobs program as well for a performance area assistant. And then I'm, of course, the music director over at my church and have had some involvement through different church areas and such. And I share all of this on my website and here because each of these experiences have informed the way that I interact with society, the way that I interact with the world, and it helps to show the type of city councilor that I would be if I'm elected. For example, planning that protest when Chick-fil-A opened, yes, we were protesting the reality that this is a business that is very homophobic and transphobic and has donated millions to very harmful LGBTQ initiatives. But the other focus of the protest was encouraging people to buy local, to support small businesses, again, investing in that community aspect. So that protest shows that I care about small businesses and I'm less fond of, the big brands, big corporations, and that I'm willing to stand up when things are not okay, right? And then similarly, the involvement through the church and through school and outside of the school shows my willingness to collaborate in many different fields, to work on all of these different social justice issues and to be part of something bigger. Because, my slogan for my campaign is that everyone deserves a voice. And I really, truly believe that. I've seen that importance of that through my work, through my education, through my volunteer, and as somebody who knows what it's like to be silenced. As a young person, as a member of the queer community, I know how important it is for us to have representation, to have an advocate, of voice at the table, and that's what I hope to be.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, actually, you answered my question because you answered one of the things that was on my mind, because I was wondering if you've been involved with actual electoral politics before, and you did bring that up in your when you were describing your history of activism. So it sounds like you've been all over Windsor. So it seems like you've had connections all over the community, the city. I guess I know you said you grew up in Ward 7, I believe, but you could have probably picked a number of areas that I guess I understand there's two open wards right now because one councillor has decided to retire and the other is running for mayor. So, I mean, there are open seats elsewhere in the city. I believe you are running against the current councillor who has decided to seek re-election. So maybe explain like maybe why Ward 7 exactly, because I see it on the list from the other people running. I don't want to bring up their names, so this is about you for now. That there are people that run before. So how does Sydney Brouillard-Coyle stand out amongst those people who've run maybe a couple of times more than you have?
Mhm. That's a great question. I would say that the reason that I chose Ward 7, because I did consider a few options. Again, I've worked in different areas, so I've considered some other wards, but I ultimately decided on Ward 7 because this is where I live, and I know how important it is to actually live in the ward, because those who actually live in the ward have the best understanding of the challenges faced. And I see so many issues that are not being addressed here. Ward 7 is the fastest expanding ward in the entire city. And we're not keeping up with it in terms of the services that we're providing. Right? I'm somebody who navigates this city using the transit system. I don't drive. And there's basically no transit in East Riverside where I live. So I actually have to get rides to the Tim Hortons to catch one bus, or to Tecumseh Mall to catch the other bus. So one of the key parts of my platform is bringing more transit service across the city, because there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed in transit, but specifically within this ward that hasn't been addressed. And that's again why I bring that different perspective than anybody who's currently running in Ward 7 or anyone who's sitting on council, because the vast majority of them, I'm guessing, are not transit users. There are people who own their own homes and to have their cars and so on and so forth, and families, whereas I bring that completely unique perspective as somebody who's just graduated university, who doesn't drive, who does not, own a house or anything like that, which is still a significant demographic within Windsor that has not had a voice and needs to have a voice. And then the other aspect about Ward 7 is there's this very neat map that was created through there was a master plan relating to community safety that was released recently. And part of that was a map of all of the social services in the Windsor community, including mental health agencies, agencies supporting those who are dealing with addiction, housing, food insecurity, and so on and so forth. And there's one service in Ward 7, and that is Matthew House, which provides emergency shelter for refugees. That is the only social service that we have in this ward. One of the fastest growing wards. So another key piece of my platform is investing in social services and actually creating a social services hub here so that people can access counseling. They can access groups and peer mentorship when they're dealing with mental health challenges, when they're dealing with addiction. They can access housing support and connection to the emergency shelters that are throughout the city, because so often our services have been centered around downtown and Walkerville. But we know that people experiencing mental health challenges and addiction challenges, and who are displaced and who are homeless, are across the city and deserve to be able to access services close to where they are, in an atmosphere that feels comfortable and is accessible.
Okay, thank you for that answer. So let's get into some, I guess issues. Like like as of time of this recording, you haven't released your platform yet. So feel free to answer as most comfortable as you can that you want to, I guess. Like cities like Windsor aren't that much different right now from a lot of other cities in Ontario. There's always issues. You mentioned transit. You said you don't drive a car. I would imagine most people in Ward 7 do drive a car. So, so maybe talk about a little bit about what exactly is current Windsor transit like, and what could be done to improve it. I guess it's only like buses is the main type of transit mode. Like I don't think can imagine like light rail being a thing that would be like useful in a city like that. I don't think the population base it would be there, but like is it just about increasing bus services into Ward 7, or is it about something else?
Yeah, so we have a fantastic Transit Windsor master plan that's going to be implemented over the next few years, which is going to completely reform, the bus system, expanding all of the access to different areas, which is excellent. I reviewed the plan. There's some really great things in there. And that will be great for a few years from now when all of the things are implemented. But we have people now who need access to transit, who need it for things like errands and visiting with friends and, going to work and going to school and so on and so forth. So what I'm proposing is more of the immediate things that can be addressed now, while knowing that we're going to be gradually working to implement this whole master plan, which will completely reform the entire system. So specifically within Ward 7, looking at expanding the route of one of the buses that comes close, but not quite all the way down. So basically just adding about 10 minutes, and then of course adding some more buses in to accommodate for the added time. But that way we can reach this specific area that's not currently being serviced. There is one bus that comes through this area, but has a tendency to just vanish into a wormhole and not show up. So ensuring that we have that as more reliable, ensuring that it's more frequent, and so on and so forth, because it currently is supposed to come every hour. And then the other thing that's always quite bothered me, currently we're on an enhanced Saturday schedule, so I want to resume to our normal schedule that hasn't been resumed since COVID hit. So resuming to our typical weekday schedule, resuming the tunnel bus as well for people who need to get across to Detroit. And then the other piece is that we want to avoid having, like a Sunday schedule, holiday schedule, because that means that oftentimes several buses, which are seen as less popular because they're less used, just don't run. But people still need to get places on Sundays and on holidays and at all hours of the night. There's lots of people who work night shifts, but a lot of buses stop by 10 p.m. So expanding hours, extending the frequency so that, the more popular buses are coming every 5 to 10 minutes, and the rest of the buses still coming fairly regularly so that people can get where they need to go in a reasonable amount of time to encourage people to use transit more. Again, making it more accessible in that sense of more frequency and so on, but also that helps us to reduce our carbon footprint as a city, and environment is another key part of my platform.
Okay. So you mentioned in one of your, sorry, you mentioned in one of your activities that you had promoted buy local. I believe that was related to the Chick-fil-A protests. I guess looking at the local economy, well, it seems Windsor's economy has been in a bit of a flux since auto manufacturing has been on a bit of a decline, although I believe it's recovering somewhat. And the recent announcement by the federal and provincial government of the Stellantis plant is, I would say, a big boost in the local economy. But is there what are your ideas about how the local economy should diversify? Because trying to rely on just one industry, it's not going to work in the long run. So, I'm just wondering, what are your ideas about helping to spur the local economy in Ward 7 and Windsor as a whole?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's where the investing in small businesses comes in. Because of course, we do need those plants and so on and so forth that do bring in a significant amount of money. And we may need to make sure that, those jobs are accessible and people are able to get those jobs and such. But it's really about investing into small businesses, into local folks who are entrepreneurs who want to create their own businesses, as that is about diversifying the economy, right? Encouraging people to buy from small businesses, lifting up the work that they're doing, similar with what I mentioned earlier, right? Lifting up local musicians and artists and photographers and such, and prioritizing the community versus large corporations versus brands that, don't pay their employees a living wage, which then keeps people in poverty, increases risks of homelessness and food insecurity. But again, providing small businesses the support to be successful to recover from the pandemic, to start up in a slowly getting to post-pandemic worlds, and just really that focus on the community, listening to what they need, because I'm not a small business owner, so I can't say what's needed. So it's that community consultation with business owners. What do you need? How can we support you in the work that you're doing? And how can we support future business owners as well?
Okay. So I believe you did bring up climate change as something you're very passionate about. And it seems that with the way things are lately, I guess we've had a bit of a heat wave in the past week or so, but that's just a latest example of obviously climate change is existing phenomenon. It just seems like locally, no matter which community we're from, it just feels somewhat hamstrung or powerless to do anything concrete about it. So, I noticed a lot of cities have done the thing where they declare it as a climate crisis or climate emergency, that sort of thing. So in terms of like climate change, at the city level, what can the city of Windsor do to try to like do something about climate change? And I don't know, like, is there anything? Because it seems like it's a really more of a global problem than it is a local problem.
Technically, yes. And I mean, everybody has a role to play in combating the reality of climate change. In 2017, the city of Windsor released an environmental master plan, which is actually quite comprehensive. I was very impressed when I read through it, and it covers a lot of areas on how you can address, climate change, how we can protect the environment, contribute to an overall greener city, things like encouraging active transportation, ensuring that, we're filtering through waterways and so on and so forth. So there's a lot included in the environmental master plan. So just ensuring, like, my role, if I'm elected, would be ensuring that that continues, like we uphold the commitments that we made in 2017, and preferably, faster, because I haven't heard much about them actually being implemented. It's one thing to say something, it's another to actually do it. Continually consulting again with the environmental organizations who are doing this work so that we can assess risks for Windsor. I know obviously we've experienced the heat wave, but flooding has also been a big issue in my ward and across the city. So flood mitigation is another big piece of that. Just generally increasing awareness about what people can do to reduce their own carbon footprint through things like environmental, festivals and such. Again, lifting up local organizations who are kind of doing this work. And one thing that I was not as impressed with in the environmental master plan was our commitment in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and waste and energy use. I felt that these targets were not aggressive enough, because climate change is a reality. It's already affecting people, and it's just going to keep getting worse unless we are very aggressive in our efforts to combat it. So I'm going to be pushing for a much more aggressive target by 2030 in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and energy use, as well as working with our local Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority to explore options to reduce waste, improve our recycling and composting programs as we transition into this new leadership, as per has been indicated by the provincial government that cities are expected to do within the next couple of years.
Okay, so as we're starting to wind down here, probably I guess my last question is really focused more on the politics of this. So Ward 7 is a little unique because it has had two municipal by-elections in the space of less than 10 years. One former councillor resigned to become an MPP, and then the councillor that replaced him ended up becoming a federal MP. So this ward recently had a municipal by-election in just 2020, and three of the candidates that ran in that by-election are running again, including the councillor. One of them, I believe, has run up to 5 times probably. So he's a name that probably has been seen a lot by the community already. So amidst all of that, with the incumbent running, with this other guy running, how do you stand out? I think I've asked you this question before, but I'm curious about your sort of strategy. I mean, we could all say we're door knocking, we're doing the phone banking, we're doing the lit drops, that sort of thing. We're getting prominent voices from the community to endorse you, because it obviously helps if people well known in Windsor and in the neighborhood say you're a good, that Sydney is a good person and should be the councillor. Just curious, just want to pick your brain a bit on this final question. How is your strategy going? What are you planning to do? Is there something different that you're doing from the other people that can make you stand out and make voters look at Sydney Brouillard-Coyle a little bit closer?
Yeah, I would say number one is I'm committing to not leave this role. If I get elected, that I'm going to stay for at least one full term, and utmost respect for Percy Hatfield and for IREC for the work that they did as councillors and now within their roles. And Percy, of course, recently retired from MPP, but I'm not leaving. If I get elected, then I'm going to serve at least one full term, and then we'll kind of go from there to see what next steps would be if I run again, or in what position. But the other aspect is my deep commitment to the community. When my platform is released, people will see that it's quite extensive, that I've done the homework. I've read through our 10-year budget. I've read through this year's budget, and, looked at what we've allocated for different areas, seen where we need some improvement, the things that are working well and the things that aren't. I've read through the master plans, for housing and homelessness, for the environment, for active transportation, for transit, all of these master plans, probably over 1,000 pages worth of materials, because I care deeply about this community. And you'll see that in my platform. It's 22 pages long, but it's about meeting the needs that are not being addressed. And it's about meeting people where they are at. So when I go to the door, I don't open with, vote for me. I say, what are your concerns? What's working for you? What's not? How can, city council, how can the city better support you in your needs? And genuinely hearing that feedback from the residents, which has already helped shape my platform and will continue to do so. And I encourage people, I know there's going to be some who think that I'm too young or that I'm not qualified, but I encourage people to look at my background, see my passion for this community, the fact that I've been involved in this community for literal decades. I've been doing social justice work since I was 6 years old. And I've been involved in politics for a full decade. So I have a deep passion for the community. I have the background. I do have well-respected community leaders within the Windsor community, of course, who've endorsed me. And what I've already done for this campaign in creating this platform, in meeting people where they're at, in planning a variety of different events and fundraisers to be accessible to folks in all of the ways that I can throughout social media, is a clear indicator of the type of city councilor that I would be if I'm elected, which is somebody who responds to people's concerns, who listens, who lifts up voices, because again, everybody deserves a voice, and makes sure that we're building a community that is safe, that is inclusive, that is accessible, and is meeting the needs that are not being addressed. And that's what sets me apart from the other city councilors, is that deep community involvement, that deep passion for our community that we build, and that deep desire to listen and to lift up people's voices and ensure that they have a voice and they know their voices matter within Windsor.
Well, thank you very much, Sydney, for the time this evening. I want to thank you for sharing your ideas and your vision. By the time this goes out, your platform should be on your website, so you can look for that. Sydney, where can people find you online if they want to find more information about your candidacy?
Yeah. So of course I have my website, sydneybc-ward7.com, and that has information all about how to get involved, a place where you can make a donation, request a lawn sign if you're within Windsor, as well as volunteering. We always need volunteers for knocking on doors, making phone calls, all of that fun stuff, as well as information about my events. And I'm also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. And one exciting thing I'm actually going to be doing with my YouTube channel is a Spotlight on Windsor series, which will start at the beginning of August, where I'm going to be taking tours of local organizations and speaking with representatives from them about the challenges that they're experiencing, and if they could wave a magic wand and fix one thing, what it would be, to highlight the work that local organizations and activists are doing within areas that are relevant to my platform. So I always encourage folks to, check out social media, website, reach out, send a text, give me a call, email. All of the information about how to contact me is posted on my website, and I'm always happy to meet with folks, chat with them. Again, just my priority is listening and making sure that everybody knows that they deserve a voice and that their voice and their vote matters in this election.
And thank you very much. And I will put all the links to all your social media accounts on my post, which will go out later with this video interview. So Sydney, I want to thank you again for this time. This is Sydney Brouillard-Coyle, running in Ward 7 in Windsor. And this is the Muni Poly Matters podcast. Thank you again for listening. Have a good evening.